There is an island in the warm blue water of the Caribbean, known as Jamaica. Nested high above its white sandy beaches and the green, lush mountains of the Cockpit Country lies the historic village of Flagstaff, formerly home of the Trelawny Town Maroons. Over 22 historic sites identified, including where the Maroons signed their treaties, the old soldiers' barracks, and the ruins of the Vaughtsfield plantation. Where is Cudjoe buried, some may wonder. Join us as we share its rich history and culture with you. Welcome to Flagstaff, formerly Trelawny Town.
Hello and welcome. I'm so glad you could join us today. It means a lot to have so many people interested in preserving and understanding the rich history, culture, and heritage of Flagstaff, formerly Trelawny Town. Please like and subscribe to the channel and ask your friends to do the same. Today, we will reveal the location of the Vaughtsfield Plantation Estate and share its rich historical connection to America, its founding fathers, and our community. Firstly, I would like to apologize for the delay in this broadcast. I had an opportunity to visit Scotland and review some material for an upcoming session. Just a few clarifications from the introductory session a few weeks ago. I'll try to answer a few questions that multiple people have asked. Firstly, the brother who joined me on the journey to a compound town was Rowan Carr, the one in the middle. Though most people, most local know him as Val. On the right is my other brother, William. The only person I know who has walked from Maroon Town in St. James to a compound town in St. Elizabeth and back within a 12-hour span. And he has done it multiple times. The second point is the pronunciation of my name, Farquharson. The name Farquharson originated from Scotland and can be traced back to the 14th century Lord Farquhar, who resided in northern Scotland. His descendants became known as Farquhar's son, establishing the Farquharson clan and surname. It is not pronounced Fagison or Farquharson or Ferguson, as some people pronounce it in Jamaica. We are the sons of Lord Farquhar, so we are addressed as Farquharsons. We had our own coat of arms. And when the Farquharsons fought the Jacobites and in other battles, this is the shield that was used. The Farquharsons had their own tartan and would be recognized by the way they dress. I hope that addressed a few of the questions you may have. Now let us look. Now let us meet Mr. Samuel Vaughan. The community of Vaughtsfield in St. James, Jamaica, is named after Mr. Samuel Vaughan. He was born on April 3rd, 1720 in Ireland and passed away in Hackney, England in 1802. He was a notable figure of his time. This portrait of him painted by Robert Edgepayne between 1785 and 1787, captures his likeness. The youngest of 12 children born to Benjamin Vaughan and Anne Wolfe, Samuel Vaughan spent a significant portion of his life in Jamaica, residing exclusively from 1736 to 1753. The community of Vansfield in St. James, Jamaica, including the Vansfield housing scheme, bear his name. This area spans an impressive 3,532 acres of lands, encompassing the Vansfield property, which includes the Vansfield Plantation Estate. Interestingly, if one considered the so-called treaty often discussed, it becomes obvious that Mr. Samuel Vaughan alone owned twice the amount of land that was allocated to the Maroons. In just one of the 5 estates he owned in the area. Yes, he did not only own Vansfield, he owned 5 estates in the area. Stay tuned for a special episode where we'll dive deeply into the details and implication of this treaty. Here's another painting of Mr. Samuel Vaughan. This portrait of him, painted by Robert Edgepayne, was painted in oil and canvas in 1760, and it can be found in the British Embassy in Washington, D.C. In his early 20s, Samuel Vaughan was sent to manage his family business in Jamaica and Boston. While in Boston, he married Sarah Howell in the year 1747. Sarah was born in 1727, and she was the daughter of Benjamin Howell, a wealthy merchant, shipbuilder, and landowner near Boston, Massachusetts. After their marriage, Samuel and Sarah spent several years on the Vaughan family sugar plantation in Jamaica, Plumstead and Vansfield in particular. Of the two, Plumstead was more luxurious, and it's likely they spent more time there before eventually relocating to London. Samuel's marriage to Sarah not only strengthens his ties to America, but it also introduced him to many of the founding fathers of America. Together, the couple had 11 children, 10 of whom lived to adulthood. This portrait of Sarah Vaughan and her son, Richard Vaughan, was painted by Robert Edgepayne, again oil and canvas, in the year 1760, and can be found at the British Embassy in Washington, D.C. I would like to draw your attention to a few of Samuel Vaughan's children. Benjamin Vaughan was the first son. He was born in April 19, 1751, and died on October 8, 1835 in Howell, Maine. He was what many described as a British political radical. He was also a commissioner in the negotiation between Britain and the United States at the drafting of the Treaty of Paris. The Treaty of Paris formally ended the American Revolution War and recognized the United States as an independent nation. Benjamin was born on the Vansfield plantation in Jamaica and studied medicine at the University of Edinburgh in Scotland. In 1786, Benjamin was elected a member of the American Philosophical Society in Philadelphia, to which his father Samuel had been elected a member 2 years prior. William Vaughan. He was also born in Jamaica in 1752 and died in 1850. He was an English West Indian merchant and an author. This bust of him was created by Chantry about 1811. I could not find a painting of him. In the year 1782, William traveled to Amsterdam to meet John Adams as part of the negotiation to end the American War for Independence. As a refresher for some in American history, John Adams was a founding father and the second president of the United States. He ruled from 1797 to 1801. Before his presidency, John Adams was a leader of the American Revolution that achieved independence from Great Britain. Next, let's look at John Vaughan. He was born in London on the 15th of January 1756 and died on the 30th of December 1841. John visited Jamaica in 1776. In 1778, he met Benjamin Franklin in France. That same year, following the signing of the Treaty of Amity and Commerce. This is a treaty between the United States and France, recognizing the United States independence and opening trade between the two countries. Vaughan, who was a British subject, was faced with possible arrest or deportation from France. He declared himself an American citizen. However, he was unable to procure a certificate to that effect and went to reside in Spain for a while before finally moving to the United States in 1782. John Vaughan finally settled in Philadelphia. Charles Vaughan, 1759 to 1839, was the sixth child. He was born in England, grew up on his father's Jamaican plantation, and moved to England in 1785. I hope you did not miss the strong connection the Vaughan family had with the United States, its founding fathers, and many influential individuals. Their daughters were also very successful. But for the sake of time, we'll not be able to discuss them. It is with pride that I point out that the hills of St. James in Jamaica has produced many great leaders. So where was Samuel's Vaughan plantation estate located? Were there any great leaders? Where were these great leaders of the American fight for independence born and raised? Who was Samuel Vaughan, the man that produced these great leaders? Up to today, no one was able to locate the spot where the Vaughan plantation estate was located. So I'll try to do that. But can history give us some clue? Can we use satellite technology to make pinpoint accuracy? One thing we know for sure is that it is located somewhere on the 3,532 acres of land that comprises the Vansfield property. The reference to Vansfield in the next two slides is not talking about the Vansfield property, but instead it points directly to the Vansfield plantation estate. Historian Mavis Campbell, in her book, The Maroons of Jamaica, says, the governor positioned himself at Vance Field within a mile of Trelawny town. Historian Cary Robinson, in his book, The Fighting Maroons of Jamaica, says, the 83rd Regiment of Foot under Fitch was marched to Vansfield, 1.5 miles from the old town. Historian Cary Robinson, in his book, The Iron Thorn, says the 83rd Regiment of Foot under Fitch was marched to Vansfield, 1.5 miles from the town. Historian R.C. Dallas, in his book, The History of the Maroons, describe the mountain areas around Trelawny town, says, whence it runs more even for 4 miles further through the woods to a pen called Vansfield, where at the distance of about 1.5 miles from the site of the old town. There are numerous other references, but for the sake of time, we'll just use these 4. We have more than enough evidence here that the Vansfield Plantation Estate must be located within 1.5 miles of the old town. And old town is accepted by every historian to be Balgrung, or garrison, as we call it today. So from the center of Balgrung, from garrison, which is accepted as the site of the old town, let us draw a circle with a radius of 1 mile. Why 1 mile, you may ask? The radius is a straight line as the crow flies, while the road have corners, up hills, down hills, which would make for a longer distance. Hope you can see or notice on the satellite map you're looking at, the yellow line is the radius of the circle, while the white line is the road. I then printed out this map. Use a piece of string to trace the road, then measured it against the scale of the map. This technique was taught in our geography classes at Cornell College. 1.5 miles from Balgrung, garrison as we call it today, takes us to a place known as Carnegie, the same place I would turn to go to our house. In doing this, we have now narrowed down the large search area from 3,532 acres to a small fraction of that. With the information we now have and the knowledge of the area, we must agree that the Vansfield Plantation Estate must be located somewhere within this semicircle, 1.5 miles from Balgrung, garrison as we know it today. Those who know the area well will immediately notice that this area is not located in the area where we would traditionally call Vansfield. I think that is the reason why it was not located or identified before today. They were looking in the wrong place. As a kid growing up, after the death of Mr. Dolphy Rubin, my father purchased his banana field and leased the land from his wife, Miss Shatty Rubin. The property had many avocado and breadfruit trees. We would pick breadfruit for my mother to take to the market. There was a problem with one particular breadfruit tree. I hated picking breadfruit from it. There was a stone foundation and the breadfruit would fall on it and get damaged. We knew that it was the foundation from a house, but nothing more. With the decline of the banana cultivation in the late 1980s, my father gave back the land to the Rubin family. So exactly where on the Rubin's property is this breadfruit tree, you may be wondering, and how is it connected to Vansfield Plantation Estate? Could the stone foundation that damaged the breadfruit I used to pick as a kid be the foundation of the Vansfield Plantation Estate? Was the site of the Vansfield Plantation Estate ever marked on any maps? If it was, then maybe this could help us in identifying it. So let us take a look. This map was published by Robertson in 1803, about 7 years after the Trelawny Town Maroon War and 7 years after Mr. Vaughan left Jamaica. Let us take a closer look at the title. It reads, a map of the interior part of Jamaica called the Cockpits, which was the seat of the Maroon War in 1795 and 96. Drawn by J. Robertson, Esquire, whose new map of the island are now engraving January 1st, 1803. On this map, Mr. Robinson clearly points out the location of the Vansfield estate. Let us take a closer look. As you can see, leaving Trelawny town, the Vansfield Plantation estate is clearly marked about 1.5 miles on the left side of the road while going around a deep corner. Does any other map corroborate this information, you may be wondering? This map you're looking at is the map showing what was supposed to be the boundaries of the original 1,500 acres of land given to the Trelawny Town Maroons as indicated by the red mark. Again, let us be clear. I do not agree that 1,500 acres was what Cudjoe negotiated on February 19, 1738. We will dig deeper into that when we look at the treaty in another episode. The red lines mark the boundaries, so let us take a closer look at the details of this map. Again, we see that leaving Trelawny town, the Vansfield Plantation estate is marked on the left, going around a deep corner about 1.5 miles from Old Town. Everyone from the area and those willing to take a drive there will agree that there is only one place that fits this description, and that is Corner Gate. To better understand what we are seeing, the little square indicated in both maps is not Vansfield property, but instead Vansfield Plantation Estate. The community of Vansfield as we know it today is only a part of the Vansfield property. Here's a current satellite image of the area we just showed you on the two old maps. I hope that you are paying attention to the deep corner. This follows tradition, where the plantation house is usually built on a hill overlooking the plantation. The only thing missing, plantation estates usually have a long driveway. And as you saw in the previous two slides, the driveway actually started somewhere between where Miss Inez' house used to be and the grave of Mr. Jacob Meggie. I hope on the satellite image you can identify Flagstaff and Corner Road. There's a small track that leads to Mr. Dalfy and Miss Shatty's grave. For the younger people from the area, this is also where Denden's son, Bulby, is buried. Well, about 50 feet based on my memory. In from the road to the right of the track, you'll find the ruins of the Vansfield Plantation Estate marked by the red star. But Devon, you may say, this is not located in the community of Vansfield. How can the Vansfield Plantation Estate not be in the Vansfield community? Every plantation estate that I have studied in Jamaica is built overlooking the property, not on the flat lands of the property. We must understand the difference between Vansfield Plantation Estate and Vansfield property, two different and distinct things. The plantation house was traditionally built overlooking the property. I hope the satellite image gives you a good idea of the commanding view of his property Mr. Vaughan would have had. He also dug the well, which even today is a source of drinking water for the community. In 1765, Mr. Vaughan purchased the position of clerk of the Supreme Court of Jamaica for himself. In the year 1769, he attempted to bribe a government minister, the Duke of Grafton, to secure a reservation of the office for his sons. This subsequent public scandal and a king's breach brought against him, Vaughan became a high-profile matter in Jamaica. After Vaughan proved that the Duke of Grafton had also sold the position a few years before, the case was eventually dropped against him. In 1770, Samuel Vaughan tried to redeem his character when he wrote the book, An Appeal to the Public, in which he explains his position. Mr. Samuel Vaughan never gained much traction in the Jamaican political scene after the scandal. So we believed this caused him and his sons to set their sight on the United States of America. We have copies of 12 handwritten letters between Mr. Vaughan and George Washington, former President of the United States. These letters were written between 1784 and 1789. Also, a few other letters written to Thomas Jefferson, Madison, and more, all presidents of the United States or founding fathers. I would love to sit and discuss our historical finding with our new Member of Parliament, Ms. Nikisha Burchell. and see how the community could benefit from this information. For full transparency, I did discuss my findings with the former MP, Mr. Homer Davis, when he was mayor of Montego Bay. As you can see, nothing positive has yet been done. Everyone acknowledges the rich history, culture of the area, but nothing is done to develop this community and the whole area around this rich history and culture. Our history is the glue that will keep our community together. You're looking at the house where former U.S. President George Washington lived in Mount Vernon, Virginia. It holds a strong connection to Mr. Samuel Vaughan in the Vansfield community. I encourage anyone who is in the area to stop by and have a visit. The tour of the house starts in the stables, which is to the left of the picture. Then you enter the main house. Just before ascending the steps leading upstairs, look to your right, back into the living room area. You will notice a fireplace. What a beauty. Well, in 1784, George Washington wrote to his friends and families in search of a marble surround suitable for his new room because he was doing some renovation on his house. In response, Mr. Samuel Vaughan presented him with this mantelpiece as a gift, made from pure marble. What a masterpiece. This mantelpiece was installed in 1786 and has served as the centerpiece of the George Washington Mansion's most public room ever since. It attracts over 1.5 million visitors annually. On the top of the mantel, you will notice 3 porcelain vases. Please make note before we move on. These vases are also part of the gift. Everyone is amazed at the intricate details carved into the marble and on the porcelain vases. On the 12th of June, 1784, from Mount Vernon, George Washington wrote to Mr. Samuel Vaughan. It gives me pain that you would think it necessary to apologize for the delay of the marble chimney piece. It gives me much more, I confess, that you ever would have thought of depriving another house of it. It is not too late. I would yet pray you to countermand this disorder. If it is, I must view the act as a most striking instance of your politeness, and shall consider the fixture of it in my house more as a monument of our friendship than as a decoration to my room. There's numerous letters we have with the correspondence, Mr. Vaughan responding back. But on February 17, 1885, George Washington again wrote to Mr. Vaughan. I have the honor to inform you that the chimney piece is arrived, and by the number of cases, 10, too elegant and costly by far, I fear, for my own room and Republican style of living. Though it increases the sense of my obligation to you for it. The ship arrived at her port just as this second frost set in. so that it has not been in my power to send up for these cases by water, and I would not hazard the transportation of them by land, 9 miles. Can you imagine? This most famous picture of George Washington, painted by Gilbert Stuart in the year 1795, was owned by his friend Samuel Vaughan. This original hangs at the National Gallery of Art in Washington, D.C. There's a lot to the relationship and friendship they shared, and Mr. Vaughan's relationship to Thomas Jefferson. But in the interest of time, we will have to stop and start wrapping up. In 1795, when the Trelawny Town Maroon War broke out, Mr. Vaughan was living at his Vansfield plantation estate. Within days, he left the island. But before leaving, Mr. Vaughan commissioned a valuator to value his assets in Jamaica and left instruction in his will that within 10 years after his death, all his assets in Jamaica should be sold. Also, if his son, Samuel Vaughan Jr., who was living in Jamaica, wanted to purchase the estate, he should be given first choice. Samuel Vaughan Jr. eventually purchased the estate and continued to operate the Vansfield property until his death in 1835. In 1802, Mr. Vaughan owned 5 properties in the area, mainly Vansfield, Flamstead, Crooked Springs, Bunkers Hill. At the time, Flamstead Plantation Estate was valued at £12,000, had 332 slaves, 150 cattle, for a total value of £65,533. Crooked Springs Plantation House was valued at £4,000. They had 150 slaves for a total value of 36,648 British pounds. Vansfield Plantation Estate was valued at £5,000, had 134 slaves, 264 cattle, for a total value of 47,463 pounds. In 1802, Flamstead comprised of 3,833 acres. Crooked Springs comprised of 3,282 acres, and Vansfield comprised of 3,552 acres. Did you notice that any one of the plantations had twice the acreage that the government said Kodjo negotiated for? If you notice, under the building value, Flamstead seems to be a better building. £12,000 versus Vansfield £5,000, more than twice the value. So we assumed that Flamstead had a better plantation estate and that Vaughan could have spent more time there when he lived in Jamaica. Here we see a partial listing of the value of the slaves on each of the different plantations. They are identified in 4 categories: men, women, boy, girl, and a value is attached to each of them. From this document, we have a breakdown of the 3,532 acres at Vanceville. 184 acres was under coffee. 80 acres was said to be in good shape. 450 acres was pasture. I think 40 acres was used for the Negroes to plant their own food to feed themselves. There were 65 male slaves valued at 7,565 British pounds and 65 female slaves valued at 6,585 British pounds. Documents like wills, inventories, purchase letters, and valuation of property would list enslaved people by their first name only, often alongside a monetary value, which is exactly what you're looking at. Yes, the 134 names of the slaves that were enslaved at the Vanceville plantation estate in 1795. Their African names were erased, and they were given Western names. Let us look at some of the name of the slaves and their value. Male, Abraham, 160 pounds. Arthur, 120 pounds. Bob, 30 pounds. Baraka, 150 pounds. Toby, 170 pounds. In the females, Alba, 130 pounds. Agnes, 40 pounds. Chloe, 100 pounds. In the interest of time, I'll stop here. But we can make the full list of all 134 slaves that lived on the Vanceville plantation at this time. Vanceville was also a central collection of civil information for the area. My grandfather and uncle, even though they did not live on Vanceville property, but their death record was recorded as Vanceville. Many from the area, their birth certificate may say Vanceville because that was where the record collection was done. Vanceville with the second A is the correct spelling because that was how Mr. Vaughan spelled his name. Yes, Vaughan. Since our time is short, I'll have to conclude here. But I thank you all for your attention and engagement. There's so much more to discuss. So let's continue the conversation in our Facebook group or in the WhatsApp group. In closing, when you think of Vanceville, remember that there is a difference between Vanceville property and the Vanceville plantation estate. It is very important that we get comfortable with the location of the Vanceville plantation estate because we'll use it as a point of reference when we identify over 22 historical sites in this area. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe to our YouTube channel and our Facebook group. Bye.